It should have been their first Christmas as a family of 4. Instead, it would be one they would never get to celebrate. This is the murder of Maureen Dutton. Let's step into the cold. 20th of December 1961, 8 a.m. Thingwall Lane, Knotty Ash, Liverpool, England. Before heading out to his job as a research chemist for ICI, 33-year-old Brian Dutton brought a cup of tea to his wife, Maureen, as she lay in bed. Life was going well for the couple. Maureen, 27, had given birth to a boy just 22 days earlier, making their eldest child, 2-year-old David, a big brother. But what Brian didn't know as he left for work that morning was that he had just seen his wife alive for the last time. Maureen had made plans for that day. With Christmas just around the corner, she wanted to take David to see the nativity scene at the Child Wall Parish Church. When Brian's mother, Elsie, stopped by the home at 11 a.m, she offered to take care of newborn Andrew while Maureen headed out with David. Elsie then left around noon, promising to be back later on. But the thick fog that had settled over the city resulted in a change of plans. Now back at her home on Broad Green Road, Elsie phoned her daughter-in-law. She no longer felt confident about heading out into the fog again, and informed Maureen she would no longer be able to babysit her grandson. This conversation took place about 1 p.m. Elsie was the last person to speak to Maureen. After a hard day's work, Brian returned home at 6:10 p.m. Given the time of year, night had already fallen, but 14 Thingwall Lane was shrouded in darkness. No lights were on, and there didn't appear to be any activity happening inside the home. The first thing that Brian noticed when he entered the house was his family's half-eaten lunch lying on a table. Brian then found Maureen dead on the living room floor. She had been stabbed 14 times, with her wounds located on her chest, throat and back. Both David and Andrew were in the same room as their mother. Andrew lay in a basket, and David was distressed. They had both been witness to their mother's murder. Chief Superintendent James Morris, who was head of the Liverpool CID, led the investigation into Maureens Murder. The investigation's headquarters were located at the Old Swan police station. Nothing had been stolen from the home, and there were no signs of sexual assault. Police came to the conclusion that Maureen had let her killer inside the home, as there were no signs of forced entry. Door-to-door inquiries were made and vehicles were checked. Local sex offenders and robbers were questioned. The Knotty Ash and Dovecot area were searched with metal detectors in an attempt to find the murder weapon, which to this day has never been found. David was constantly watched by a policewoman in case his baby talk revealed anything about the crime he had witnessed, but nothing came of this. By the 17th of January 1962, the police had gathered 20,000 statements. Using these statements, an identikit was created of a man seen by Maureen's neighbours on Thingwall Lane around the time she was killed. The man, who was wearing a leather jacket over a green jumper, was described as young and good-looking. The identikit became the first colour identikit to be printed in a British newspaper, when it appeared on the front page of the Liverpool Echo. Over 60 people responded to the image in the 24 hours after it was published, but efforts to find the man were not successful. Interpol turned down a request for help in finding the man. Decades later, Radio Merseyside received a call from a listener who said he was the man in the leather jacket. He said that when the murder happened, he was working a shift for a delivery firm, and his van happened to break down on Thingwall Lane. When he saw the identikit in the newspapers, he got rid of his leather jacket. The stranger in the leather jacket was not the only theory that investigators looked into. Located on Thingwall Lane was St. Edward's Orphanage. At the time, the orphanage had recently been converted into a mental health hospital, leading to speculation that Maureen's killer was an escaped patient. The hospital was less than 100 yards from the crime scene, but no substantial leads came from this theory. Late in the afternoon on the day of the murder, a female bus passenger was overheard saying that she had done something terrible and had to leave the city. The blonde Irish woman was reportedly a nurse and had boarded the 10D bus in the city centre at 4:30 p.m. She disembarked on Lime Street. Fellow passengers said she appeared agitated and out of breath. The woman was overheard saying, "Oh my God," repeatedly, and had mentioned that she needed to get to London, where she would board a plane. The woman has never been located. The police also theorised that a fake doctor may have been responsible for Maureens' murder. The police had received a report from a woman living in the Halewood area of Liverpool. The woman had recently given birth and was called on at home by a fake doctor who assaulted her. Initially, the woman thought the doctor was a part of the post-childbirth care services hospitals have in place. The man who committed the assault was described as being between 27 and 30 and dark-skinned with curly hair and a wide nose. He had been wearing a dark grey overcoat and horn-rimmed glasses. A man of a similar description was also seen on the afternoon of the murder, being sick next to the Courthay Methodist Church. The church is roughly half a mile from the crime scene. The man kept his hands in his pockets while vomiting. People began to wonder if this man had called at Maureen's house the day she was killed. Then, in 1962, a male nurse aged 24 was arrested and charged with the theft of drugs and equipment from 3 hospitals in Liverpool. It was determined that he was also the fake doctor. Research on this theory suggested that this man was found not guilty of murder at Liverpool's Magistrates' Court, but I was unable to find more than a couple of sentences regarding the murder charge, and whether it related to Maureens' murder or a separate murder is unclear. The final theory was put forward by Deputy Chief Constable Bert Barmer. Just days after the murder, Barmer allowed reporters into the Duttons' home in order to interview him. During the interview, Barmer showed the press a wooden statue of the Polynesian god Tiki. It was then that Barmer claimed that Maureen had been killed as part of a ritual sacrifice carried out by people who worshipped Tiki. Barmer told the press that these sacrifices were carried out under a full moon on the winter solstice. As part of the investigation, Barmer began visiting Polynesian clubs and restaurants and listened to Polynesian music. In the early 60s in Liverpool, a number of Polynesian restaurants had opened, and Polynesian culture was becoming of interest to people. It's believed that Balmer saw the popularity of Polynesian culture as a cult following, and nothing of importance ever came from this theory. Maureens' murder remains unsolved decades later. David and Andrew have had to grow up without their mother by their side, and with each day that passes by, the likelihood of Maureen's killer being caught grows smaller.